Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming and welcome to ODI Leeds. Thanks for attending this event, which, as you know, is the future of transport in the north. Here are some of the event details. So tweet us, tweet me, and use the event hashtag, as you can see there. As you probably know, this event is part of the Leeds Digital Festival. So the festival has 169 events on all themes digital taking part across the city and finishes tomorrow. This event is an opportunity to celebrate and showcase the most interesting, exciting and innovative projects and businesses in transport across the north of England. Before we start, I've got some logistics and some thank yous. So tea and coffee, as most of you have probably seen, is just out there on the side. Once you're finished with cups, please place them back in the black trays in there. Don't just discard them and leave them all around, because that creates jobs for us. Toilets are back in the hall, just past the lifts where probably most of you came out. There are no fire alarms planned, so if you do hear an alarm, that probably does mean there is a fire, and that is a problem. There's a fire exit there. There's also another one back out through the hall, past the lifts, toilets, down the stairs. Firstly, thank you to Transport for the North for sponsoring this event. Their sponsorship means that we can host and feed you for the day. It also demonstrates their enthusiasm and support for innovation in transport in the north of England. Thanks also to IBM for sponsoring the wider programme of other events taking part as part of the Leeds Digital Festival. Thank you to the rest of the ODI Leeds team for hosting and catering for today. It's no mean feat to host and cater events like this, especially at the back of a full programme of 2 weeks of events as part of the festival. Thank you to our speakers, all 10 of you in advance, for making time to come and tell us about your projects and innovative businesses today. And then finally, thank you to you for giving up your work, a day of work and your schedules to come and attend this event. So this event is an opportunity for us all to be excited and amazed by the innovation and the future of transport. We want you to contribute your ideas, questions and input to the day throughout. And here at ODI Leeds, we believe firmly that those who put the most in get the most out. In terms of our agenda, after we've had a brief intro from Ginny at TFN, we're going to have 2 sets of lightning talks. Our first part, which will be about an hour, will end with a demo of a driverless vehicle, which is the Westfield Pod, which some of you may have passed outside the front doors on the curb. That will be about 11:15, so we'll have an extended coffee break to allow everyone to go down, probably via the stairs, not via the really slow lift, to go and have a look, take some photos, find out more information. After part 2 of the lightning talks, that'll take us through to lunch, which will be about 1 till 2. And after lunch, we're going to have a sort of a hands-on demo session for about an hour. So all of our speakers will sort of man a stand, where we will invite all of you to kind of in an open house style, go and visit, ask questions, find out more information from each of our individual speakers. In the final hour of the day, we'll hear from 3 TFN staff members in a panel Q&A format. So we'll be discussing the remit, the scope and projects of TFN, as well as the innovations projects that TFN are leading and delivering. For that Q&A panel, we would like you to contribute to that. So on the wall over there, in a Blue Peter style, Amy, just next to Amy there, we've got some space, so we'd like you to contribute. If you do have a question for TFN for that panel, please go over to that wall, write it on a Post-it note, stick it on the wall, and sort of in the open house session, what we'll do is we'll pull them together into themes and questions, and we'll bring those out in the panel. We will also be doing that via Twitter. And we will also have some opportunity for raising your hands and asking questions in the Q&A there. So before we move on to the TFN intro, we have got a few announcements from ODI Leeds. So this event formalises and announces the creation of our new transport-focused proposition at ODI Leeds. So it's the first time that ODI Leeds has had an industry sector-focused proposition. And we think transport's the most appropriate sector to do that. We'll be bringing everything that people know and love about ODI Leeds, the innovation, the community, the events, the passion, into the transport sector and growing that community. So we'll be focusing effort, resource and energy into driving open innovation through data in transport. We already have a number of projects underway. We're working with Transport for West Midlands, helping them to create a new data set around real journey times and helping them to work out how they and their stakeholders can get the most value out of that data. We're also pleased to announce a new project with the Department for Transport. So we'll be working with them to run an open consultation process for the secondary legislation of the Bus Services Act. We'll have a nationwide programme of events that will take place in June and July. So if you want to input or you think you'll be impacted by that, listen out for further information over the coming weeks as we announce that schedule. And of course, there is our ongoing relationship and partnership with Transport for the North. So stay in touch if you're interested in hearing about those upcoming events and other projects. As ever, we'll be working radically open, making it easy for you to reach in and get involved and contribute on your terms. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ginny from Transport for the North for an introduction to TFN.
Yeah? All right, thank you. Thanks, Neil. Good to know that we're supporting the important bits, the feeding. Thanks, ODI, for letting us support this event again today. And this is kind of the next event in a line of events that we've been doing with ODI around data in the North. I work for Transport for the North. For those of you who don't know, we are England's first subnational transport body. As from the 1st of April, we received our statutory powers, so we are now facilitating a joined-up approach to transport right across the North. So it's really important that we're working with partners like ODI to deliver the aspirations of the organisation. So the Integrated and Smart Travel Programme. Got too much going on here. Where do I need to aim it? Yeah? Let's just do it on there. Okay. So Transport for the North, I'm working on a programme called the Integrated and Smart Travel Programme. And through embracing emerging technologies, we are enhancing the customer experience right across the North with our public transport. Our aim is to make travel easier to find out about and easier and quicker to pay for. So essentially, our passengers will be able to leave their house, pick up their app on a mobile phone, on a computer or a tablet, find out about their journey. So similarly as you would find out about bus travel, train travel at the moment, you'll be able to find out what fares information you need to be able to hop on a bus as well as a train and find out if there's any disruption. You'll be able to choose which type of media you use to pay for it. So you'll be able to use contactless EMV card or contactless payment card, any wearables, apps. You'll be able to then hop on your choice of transport for the day and be assured that if you make a selection of journeys across the day that you will be paid the fairest price for that day. So we're introducing a London-style capping system. So you can choose bus, tram or train and you will ensure that you will be only paid up to the limit of the best price that you could have bought in advance of that journey. You'll get real-time disruption information. You'll find more about that from Richard, one of my colleagues, later on. And you'll be able to find out about your journey afterwards by accessing either an account or tapping into the information via a customer service portal. So a real transformational program for the North. We've got high aspirations and working collaboratively with our partners, the bus and train operators, local transport authorities. We're delivering a real transformation across the North, and by the end of the programme, come end of 2020, we'll hope that you'll be able to see some real difference. So the programme's been delivered across three phases. We're delivering with our train operating partners smart card on rail, so we're moving season tickets that are based on paper at the moment over to plastic-based smart cards. For our phase 2, we're working on a project that we call Customer Information Collaboration and Innovation. So that's largely around making bus fares data available to our passengers via apps and journey planners, but also making sure that as much information around disruption is available. And then phase 3 is around our account-based travel, so that's where we're looking at the fair price promise, so the capping for the day, and using contactless EMV right across the network. Now, we've got a video to show you that hopefully will explain this.
Technology means people expect everything at their fingertips, and transport is no exception. Here at Transport for the North, our integrated and smart travel program is working with operators, local transport authorities and other partners to transform the North's public transport services and customer experience, putting simple and more convenient travel in people's hands. Our goal is to make public transport in the North easier to understand, use and pay for. Here's what it looks like. It starts with the customer deciding on which journey to make, then deciding whether to buy a ticket in advance, a ticket for multiple journeys, or simply pay as they go. Then hopping on with a tap, trusting they'll be charged the best price for all their journeys when it's calculated at the end of the day. If there's any disruption, they'll know about it and be able to plan around it by using an alternative transport mode with the same payment method. Then when they arrive, they simply tap again and carry on with their day. That's the goal. Here's how we'll do it. Smart travel starts with smart cards for rail. Customers will be able to pre-buy rail season tickets online or at the station, which are loaded onto their smart card, and simply tap it to start and end their journeys. Phase 2 will make information freely available. We'll take information directly from operators so that bus and light rail passengers have the same experience as rail passengers. There'll be a hub where data will be stored, processed and made available to everyone, and we'll provide templates and tools to help develop further technology. All the while, we'll be supporting the best innovations and technology pilots for later phases. The next big step will be contactless payments for more of the public transport in the North. Passengers will be able to buy multi-operator, multi-mode tickets, trusting they'll be charged the best price at the end of the day. And operators will have peace of mind that they'll get paid for every journey securely and easily, making it the best option for everyone. Creating a joined-up North won't be easy. But then, the North isn't known for shying away from big challenges. If we all share information and adopt a collaborative approach, we can give customers the unified experience they want and deserve. Let's get the North moving.
Okay, so in a nutshell, that's what the program's going to be delivering. As Neil mentioned before, we do have a panel later on this afternoon, I think 3 o'clock. So if you do have further questions and require more information about any of the phases of work that we're delivering, then please either store them up or write them on the wall, and we'll get around to answering those later. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Ginny. So now you will see the technology in action. I will stand here for approximately 10 seconds and do some filling while the microphone changes over to the next speaker. Hopefully that's enough, and now Richard's ready. So for the next speaker,
I think so.
Richard Mason, who is Information Strategy Manager for TfN.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes. The back, okay? Yeah, cool. Thank you. Okay, so welcome. So Ginny's already talked about some of the stuff we're doing on phase 2. I'm just going to go a bit more detail around that, but there's opportunity later in the day to come and talk to me more about some of the phase 2 bits and pieces. I must say at the moment we're in a procurement process for phase 2, so there's a number of things that we can't discuss. So I know there's some suppliers in the room today. I'm sure you're all aware of some of the restrictions on that. So in terms of, I'll move that along. Okay, so we've got some exciting open data projects, and Ginny's already sort of mentioned some of that. We've got basically all around improving the customer experience. I just want to quickly just talk around some of the approaches to data within TfN generally. This is, fits not just to the IST program, but to the wider programs within TfN. So TfN sees data as an asset, Clearly that data has to be secured. We want that data to be shared. Data to be open by default. We need that data, all those risks to be managed around data and make sure the data is fit for purpose. So that's the sort of the key principles that TFN are working towards around its data strategy. We have developed an open data policy, which is a great step forward. It gives some commitment around what TFN are looking to do with open data. So that's all positive stuff. Now, just looking at the IST open data projects on phase 2, it's all around making travel easier, making customer experience better, and making data freely available. So we've got 2 data sets that we are looking to create. We're looking to facilitate data. We don't want to create any journey planning apps or anything like that. What we want to do is create data for the likes of the open data community and local authorities and others to use that data in a sensible way to improve the customer offer. Those 2 data sets, one of them is around fares, fare information. So it's about, we'll start with singles and returns and some day and week tickets and then move towards multi-operator tickets and look at putting other modes in there. We'll start with bus. I think what's important there is there's some good examples of where fare data is available in other modes, and I think the bus world needs to catch up a bit. And we've seen some of that come through in the Bus Services Act, in 2017 Bus Services Act, and what will come through in the regulations by 2020 in terms of more transparency around fare data. So we're looking to do something around using a data standard called GTFS, an extended version of that that's used in Wales, but clearly we need to be aware of what's happening with the data standard that comes out of the regulations with the Bus Services Act, which is likely to be NetX. We're also looking to create a disruption data set. So that will be, again, a repository of data where local authorities and operators feed into, but mainly that will be more for the local authorities that have business as usual processes now. They'll create data, and then basically that will be published in the Series X format. Those 2 data sets will be made available on an open data platform where the likes of the developer work community will come in, use the data, academics will come in and use the data, whoever wants to come in and access that data and use it for whatever purpose they want to. But clearly we want to do some engagement with people that are developing journey planners and customer-facing transport information. Just want to quickly just give an overview, if that's come through okay. So this is a high-level overview. This level of detail is in the procurement information that's been released to the market, which you can access from our Transport for the North page. There's a supplier page on there. We can register. You'll get access to all the information. There's a lot more detail in there if anyone's wanting that detail. But basically, we'll be looking to create some data around fares and disruption, so that'll be made up from local authorities, and the operators will come in and create some data, whether they've got systems that can provide that data automatically now, or they can sort of come in there and manually create that data. But the basic, the nub of it will be we need to sort of get that data in a place, in a structure and formatted way that we can then publish out onto an open data platform in a consistent manner for people to make some sense of. We clearly need to work very closely, and we are working very closely with our transport authority partners and operators, because clearly we want to sort of facilitate this data. We don't run bus services. We leave that to the people that know more about that. But what we want to do is sort of bring this data all together and make that available and widely open. So in terms of what we've done so far, just a snapshot on some bits and pieces of what we've done. So we have established a joint project with Travel Line, National Travel Line, to mobilise some fares work already and to test the vision and to test what we're trying to achieve. We work very closely with DFT. So we've established a ways of working arrangement with DFT buses team, and so far that's all been positive. We've actually joined the DFT Bus Open Data Program Board, which is all about shaping the regulations from the Bus Services Act. because it's very important. Although we're looking to do something before the regulations, in that window before, with those operators and local authorities that want to do something before in advance, it's very important we're aligned to what DFT are looking to do for the longer term to make sure that things are joined up. We've held lots of workshops, lots of face-to-face and conferences and working groups with operators and local authorities, but there's lots more we need to do on that. We've engaged the supply market, so we've warmed up the market so they're aware of what we're doing, and we've had lots of interest so far on the procurement that we've put out that's active at the moment, so that's good. We've held something called Travel Hack 1 and 2, which was here with the ODI. They were great events, and they were all about socialising what we're doing in terms of the data sets we're looking to release, but also it was about warming up the open data community. We've issued the tenders for the Fares and Disruptions and Open Data Platform. So next steps, I'll just quickly run through these. We need to evaluate the tenders that are due back on the 9th of May. We need to look to select suppliers. We need further engagement with operators and local authorities and our stakeholders. We need to establish some working groups around some of these projects. And we clearly need to have that ongoing engagement and support with DFT around the Bus Services Act. And then beyond business case submission, get the money, mobilise the projects, release the data. Simple as that. Have we got time for questions? Okay. How are we doing for time?
Loads of time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Questions?
Well ahead.
Yes.
Can I ask, because this is very public transport focused.
Yes.
Have you got aspirations?
Sorry. So, because we're live streaming, we need to get you on a mic, so we'll just get the mic. And then the people at the back will hear you. So, who you are, where you from?
Beata Kubitz, Travel Spirit, and writer for Local Transport Today. Do you have expectations and aspirations of bringing data from shared transport and new mobility into your streams and integrating it with the network that you're envisioning?
Yes, we do, but we have a vision that we need to start with something small for the time being. We need to start with something and build that up. We want to create this open data platform. We don't see that just having fares and disruption data, and we see that having lots more data involved in that data set. But for the time being, we're starting with bus fares and disruptions because that is the gap in the market at the moment. But yeah, we absolutely we're open to lots of things. Nothing's closed.
So where you've got for instance, a hybrid type service run on a private hire service, private hire operation. So you like Slide in Bristol. Are you going to be getting that kind of data in?
Well, if it exists already, well then we've got facilities signpost to it. In terms of hosting the data, we have no plans for that right now. We're starting with, like I said, bus fares and disruption data. But in terms of mobility as a service and all this other data, all the data around transport, that's something we've not sort of said discounted and said no. That it's something that we will have to build into our programs.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Oh, there we go.
Giles Perkins, WSP. Are there plans for interoperability cross-border into other areas? Because I mean, you're clearly saying you'll start small, but have there been discussions about that interoperability north to Scotland, south to the Midlands, etc.?
Yes, so we are in discussions with TfWM and with Transport Scotland, and obviously Transport for North has this this geography and this virtual boundary, but clearly, as you said, there's other parts that sort of butt up into that northern geography that we need to be sort of mindful of for the customer experience, because we know people do travel across that boundary. So we're regularly engaging with the people that are in that sort of vicinity.
Great. Any other questions? I have one to finish, Richard. And obviously, we at ODI Leeds are very excited about the potential for more transport data and get that it's a scalable thing. But in terms of your timelines, when will I, as a punter, as a bus user, be able to find out my bus fare?
Good question, Neil McClure.
Yeah.
So the timeline we're working towards, so the final business case, which submission will go to DFT, we're looking to get that to DFT this year. We've got to get that, that's the timeline. And realistically, we're looking for data to be available early 2019. However, the work we've done with Travelline, the joint work we've done with Travelline are looking to get some data available with the operators they've been working with and ourselves that we've been sort of helping to mobilise, looking to get some data available this year and very soon.
Good. All right, thank you very much, Richard.
Okay.
Round of applause for Richard, please. Let's take that off. Okay, so moving on. So mobility as a service is a concept that has been around in transport for probably a couple of years now. But as many of you may be aware, there is a live project taking place in the UK right now, and it's in Birmingham. So we've got Chris Perry here from Mass Global, who's the company who's running that project in Birmingham, who's going to tell us all about it.
Might need to fill in for 10 more seconds.
And here he is.
Morning, everybody. Great to be here and to see you all. So I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I haven't got a presentation. So instead of looking at the screen, you're probably going to have to look at me for 10 minutes or so. I think it's 10 minutes-ish. Yes, there or thereabouts. So mobility as a service, what is it? Now, I don't know how much people in this room are aware of the concept. So I tend to assume that perhaps I ought to just explain at a very sort of basic level what we're talking about. The concept of mobility as a service, for me, it's all about bringing all of your mobility needs into one place. So whether that is public transport, private transport, shared transport, a way of you being able to live your life, which includes a lot of moving around, to have your mobility delivered to you through one service. So Mars Global is a Finnish company that aims to deliver that service through an application called WIM that was launched here in the UK on the 5th of April. Now, you can actually go and download WIM today. You can actually use WIM in Leeds to order a taxi. And actually the taxi rates that we give you are probably cheaper than you can get from the cab yourself. So if anyone does want to jump into a cab to Leeds station or further, actually you can download WIM, get a taxi with Get through that application and feedback what you think. One word of warning, there is another application called WIM. I think it's a US-based company that sometimes pops up first on your app. That's a dating site. Particularly for those married colleagues amongst us, be careful which one you download. I found out the hard way. Anyway, without much ado. So the reason why I wanted to talk about WIM is today is very much about open data. And WIM is an application that very much requires open data to be available to enable us to sell a product to you. So I mentioned that WIM is more than public transport. WIM is a solution that will enable you to live your life, whether it's right to walk somewhere, grab a cycle share, public transport, cab, or hire a car. So we understand that public transport is never going to meet every single one of your needs unless you happen to live right in the middle of the city centre and only travel in an urban environment. So the product that we offer will allow you to live your life with all of the flexibility that having a car will give you, but without the hassle that owning a car actually has. Insurance premiums, maintenance, things going wrong with it, having to find somewhere to park your car. Actually, if you've got a car, you tend to use it because you've got that asset that's sitting on your driveway. If you don't actually own a car and you only need it for those journeys that you really need it for, we think we can encourage more people to use public transport. I've brought a couple of little flyers with me that sets out what we're doing in Birmingham. So just to give you an understanding of what it is that WIM does, it works in a couple of ways. So there's a pay-as-you-go service that customers can use. You can download that without any commitment, and that's what I encourage you all to download today. Have a look at it, tell me what you think, and that will allow you to plan a journey anywhere in the country, and it will show you the options that are available to you, the public transport options that are available to you, and if we can sell you a ticket, if you're in Birmingham, for example, where we've got agreements with National Express buses and Metro, we can sell you a day ticket for that particular journey or for that particular day. If you're in one of 9 cities in the UK, we can sell you a cab ride. If you are within the West Midlands, we've opened up enterprise car hire to you. So you can access all of those services with no commitment, just pay as you use. But if we're going to really give people the freedom of mobility and to be able to allow you to get rid of your car, we want to give people a service that is effectively as good as owning your own car. So we've introduced a couple of subscription services in the West Midlands. Our most exciting subscription is what we call WIM Unlimited. So that actually will give you unlimited public transport, buses, trams and trains across the West Midlands area. It will give you unlimited taxi rides for up to a 5 kilometre as the crow flies radius, and it will also give you unlimited car hire with our partner Enterprise of an economy three-door vehicle. And when the bike share comes to Birmingham later this year with Nextbike, you'll get unlimited use of that too. And the 349 price point has been chosen because our research indicates that that's for the average person who's got a reasonably new car is probably spending around £349 a month on owning and allowing that asset to depreciate on their driveway. So we're very much about being able to offer customers a service that is effectively no more or even cheaper than owning your own car, but giving you that flexibility of a car when you need it, a taxi when you need it, public transport when it's the right thing to do. We understand that's quite a lot to ask people to part with £349 a month for a company they've probably never heard of. So we're offering an easy way into a package called WIM Everyday that's unlimited public transport, bus, tram and train, but then taxi when you need it with our special rates with Get Taxi, Enterprise car hire when you need it at capped rates. So car hire goes up and down in price. I don't know about you, but every time I want to hire a car, the cheap rates aren't there. I have to buy it when it's expensive. That's supply and demand for you. So with our everyday customers, we don't want people to have to face the challenge of really expensive car hire. So we're actually capping it at £49 a day. So for £49 a day, we'll guarantee that you'll get a three-door vehicle, economy three-door vehicle available for you. Very often it'll be less, but it will never be more than £49 a day. So those are the services that were launched on the 5th of April. We've got several thousand downloads already, and a number of customers have already signed up to those subscription packages, probably more than we anticipated, although we absolutely accept there's a long way to go. We are bringing something new and novel into the marketplace. And we very much want to co-create the development of these services with customers in Birmingham, stakeholders in the industry, so you guys. My contact details, I'll probably make sure they're shared afterwards. I'm very happy to hear from anybody what you think, how you think we could improve that service. And of course, we don't just want to be in Birmingham. Our company name is Mars Global. We're in advanced discussions with a couple of cities in the south of England to launch some products there. But absolutely, we would love to be able to provide the WIM service in the north of England, which is why I'm here today. A great advantage to local authorities is that this comes free of charge. This is a way of using the service, the data that is available through those open data portals. The investment's already been made by WIM shareholders to develop the platform. If we've got access to the data, we need access to the transport service providers to sell their products. We've got access to taxi already. We've got a lot more taxi coming soon. We've got access to car hire. Now Enterprise are on board. A lot of others want to come on soon too. Are in discussions with the major bus companies about how we can work with those to allow their tickets to be made available through WIM. So once you've got access to car hire, you've got access to car, you've got access to bus, actually it's pretty straightforward to offer at least the pay-as-you-go service across the country. One thing I should say is that we will very soon become an accredited agent, RSP agent, to be able to sell train tickets too. So whatever transport mode you need, you will have. And I see Robin's on the back there from Stagecoach, so perhaps we'll continue to have some interesting discussions about how we can work in partnership with one of the country's leading bus operators. Well, I was just checking you were awake. So I think I'll probably leave it at that and leave some time for some questions.
Yeah, nice pitch. Thanks for that, Chris. Big round of applause. Does anyone have any questions for Chris? Can you wait, Carl, while we'll get the microphone to you so you get picked up?
Carl Partridge from Urban Things. Thank you for that, Chris. In the UK, I think we maybe got in trouble with our journey towards mass because we had a load of siloed transport operators who couldn't have interoperable ticketing. Do you think there's a danger in the future that we might have a load of siloed mass providers?
I think that's a really good question. So MARS can only really work for customers if you've got access to all of the products and services that you need to live your life. If there was an application that only gave you access to some products and services, it's likely to fail. So whilst I do believe there'll be a number of different products that do come to market, I mean, effectively market forces will make sure that the ones that rise to the top and succeed will be those ones that customers actually want to use, and that does mean you've got to have effectively availability for anything. I'm actually going to say that I've got quite a lot of experience with working with Mars Global for a few months, and actually the public transport providers in the UK tend to be really open. We've had examples, we're working hard with some German transport authorities, and they tend to be very closed because they're very local authority, government controlled. They tend to be very much about protecting their environment and are less open to change actually than our private sector bus companies.
So will you work with other mass providers to interoperate with their scheme?
Well, who knows what may and may not be possible. So we don't rule anything in or anything out. But you know, we're a private sector company. We've got to deliver a service that's great for customers and also makes a return to shareholders. If it's in the customer's interest and the shareholder interest to work together with other partners, we will. You know, but O2, Vodafone, etc., cooperate at one level, but they also compete too. That's probably where I think we will get to.
Good question. Any more? Yeah.
Vicky Williams, Trent Barton. So the principle of MAS is pretty much packaging what's already there and putting it into one simple place.
Yes.
But doesn't account-based ticketing and everything that's going to happen with that going forwards actually do that for the UK? And shouldn't we be a bit bolder and be looking at things like car parking and congestion charging and everything? So if they do hire a car, they can also get their car parking sorted out. Just taking it that little bit further, are we not just sort of boxing it a bit too much?
So I think you're right about the longer term, about bringing everything together. So with account-based ticketing for us would be marvellous because we probably wouldn't need to do individual deals with individual bus companies. We'd just have a magic gizmo within the smartphone that would be our account, and we'd just pay the relevant amount of money to the account-based ticketing organisation who will distribute it to operators. That doesn't exist today, so we could wait or do what we're doing now. What we've launched now we think is very much a minimum viable product because absolutely where we want to get to in the longer term is for you to be able to live your mobility life all through one application. But we've got to start somewhere, so we decided that our starting place should be public transport, car hire, car share where it exists, taxi and bike share. Let's bring other products and services onto. Now we want to integrate with coffee shops, we want to integrate with your food delivery service, you know, potentially even your Amazon service to make all of that work together. But if we try to start too big, we'll probably never get off the ground.
Good. Any last questions for Chris? There's another one there on the front row. I think probably make this the last one.
Hi, Atu Jalani from Arriva Click. Do you think there are enough flexible products and services currently available to move people from A to B to really push people to ditch their car and take up MAS?
I think it depends where you are in the country. So you know, we're launching in cities and in the urban parts of cities. So you know, our product in the West Midlands works across the West Midlands, but taxi coverage is best within Birmingham city centre. So our launch is very much around people living within a 5k 3-mile radius of Birmingham city centre, because that's where you've got the service density. What we're hoping is that by platforms such as ourselves coming along, we can encourage these new mobility services to come along, because there is a way in then to a system where they can hopefully generate some patronage by being part of the overall system. So, you know, we want to work in partnership with providers such as Arriva Click to help build those services and at the same time integrate them into our service delivery model.
All right, I think we're done. So we have a round of applause for Chris. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. So Chris is going to be around for the open house kind of demo session at 2 o'clock. So if you're a transport operator, local authority, interested punter, whatever it is, feel free to look up Chris and give him some more challenging questions. So next up, we've got Louise Coward from Transport Focus who's going to tell us about some research they've been doing on young bus passengers.
Thank you. Hello everyone. I'm probably going to talk very quickly because I've got lots to say here, but I've managed to hopefully squeeze it down into 10 minutes to give you a flavour, but happy to chat at further length later on for more details. So for those of you who don't know who we are, Transport Focus, we are the organisation that represents transport users. Our purpose is to collect proper evidence and to be useful to the industry to make things better for the user. And as part of that, I'm going to tell you about this project that we launched in February, looking at young transport users. And it was very much about the 14 to 19 age group. How do they feel about transport generally, public transport, private transport, and how do they think their use is going to change in the future, and what do they want to see from various modes of transport. So, bit of good news to start with is, in broad terms, generally young people agree that public transport is pretty essential for helping communities function, getting people where they want to go or need to go. I should just mention that the method that we used here was quite comprehensive, so we did both an online survey of 1,000 14 to 19-year-olds, as well as detailed focus groups, getting young people out and about, making journeys. So you'll see within this, there's photos that young people have taken on buses, there's some kind of material that they generated in focus groups, and there's loads more in the report and online. So I really am just showing the headlines here. But broadly, you know, yes, it's important that we have public transport. However, they also agree that it needs more investment. And they tend not to agree so much. Only 6 out of 10 agree that public transport meets their personal needs. Currently, just over half think that public transport is for people who don't have a car. And clearly part of what we explored as part of this was how young people feel about getting a car in the future, which is quite interesting. And when you ask them what they think about public transport, you get a mix of positive and negative views about what they think public transport looks like. It generally has a perception of being quite overcrowded, and this whole thing about having to mix with members of the public. Lots of the young people were talking about randomers on the bus, and someone coming and sitting next to you and potentially making you feel quite uncomfortable because they're used to having their own space, and it can feel quite intimidating to be sort of confronted with members of the public. However, it can be really convenient, it can be quick, it can be cheap, but it can also be quite expensive for them. They perceive some differences between trains and buses. This whole hanging around, waiting, wasting some of their really precious time is a frustration. But equally, it does provide freedom and independence, and it allows them to go and do things unaccompanied without their parents. So it plays an important role there. When you ask them about buses, though, filtering it down a little bit more, we tend to get more negative comments coming through and less of the positives. So what do you think about buses then? Overcrowded, dirty, unreliable, weird people, bus drivers are grumpy. It's a bit of a sort of confrontation. The driving can feel a bit unsafe, and you know, actually it's a last resort sometimes for them. However, they are generally supportive of the bus network in its entirety, and they do think it's really important that areas have good bus networks. 3/4 are agreeing that it's a good way to get about using the bus, but less than half think that buses are the cheapest way of getting to places. And they did talk about things like, well, obviously if there's 3 or 4 of you going into town or going to the cinema in urban areas, it's actually cheaper to get an Uber, and it's more convenient, and it feels quite sort of empowering and a bit cool to be like, oh yeah, he'll just be coming around the corner now. That's a completely different experience from standing at a bus stop thinking, do you think it's been yet? Do you think it's cancelled? Where is it? We might have missed it. When's the next one coming? It feels quite different to them. And as I said, they did send us lots of pictures in when we got them to make journeys for us. And what was quite noticeable is how many of them were just sending in pictures of things, saying this is really dirty, look at this, and pictures of litter and things like that. So the young people, they are noticing the quality of the vehicles, and, you know, oh, it was rusty, it was jolty, it was, you know, not as I would expect it to be, and not as I know a bus can be. In many, particularly of the urban situations, they could identify differences between different routes or different operators, and while they weren't necessarily aware of brand X versus brand Y, they would talk about so-and-so route being really good because it's got the nice new buses that have got Wi-Fi or have got charging versus another one that doesn't have that. So, you know, they are quite discerning between routes, even if they don't always have that brand awareness between them. Fares is, not surprisingly, quite an interesting area, and they did talk about it a lot. Sorry, that's just moved itself forward. A lot of confusion about fares. One of my previous slides said about the social anxiety, and I think it's really important to remember that, you know, 14, 15-year-olds particularly are really just finding their feet and their independence. They're not used to asking questions, being assertive, standing up for their rights. They are very used to being, you know, either having parental support, supervision when they're doing things, or having technology there helping them do the things that they want to do. So many of them do feel quite anxious about using public transport generally. And there is this enormous fear that we mustn't forget around looking like an idiot. I mean, we all feel it as adults, but for those 14, 15-year-olds, the thought of getting on a bus and looking stupid and getting embarrassed and doing something wrong is enough to put them off, and may sometimes make them, you know, I might get the bus, but I'm not sure what to do, so I'll get my mum to take me, because of that fear of looking a bit silly. And when it comes to fares, you know, they don't know what they're supposed to ask for. They're not sure how to make sure they're getting the best deal. They don't know if they've got a pass that they can use during the week, if they can use it at weekends, and they don't feel comfortable necessarily asking the driver, am I doing this right? Because they don't feel that they'll be sort of helped. And when it comes to discounts or special fares, 48% of the total feel that there's a good range of fares and discounts available for them, but equally that means half of them don't. You can read that either way as to whether it's positive or negative, but there's certainly room for improvement there. And what's it like when they use the bus? It's often disappointing for them. So we've got around half saying, this is of bus users, which was about 80% of the total, that at least half the time the bus doesn't arrive on time, there's litter on the bus, it's dirty, it's rowdy, it feels overcrowded, and, you know, even about a quarter saying they don't feel particularly safe on the bus, and that feeds back into that whole feeling of insecurity and anxiety that we mustn't forget young people often feel. The perfect bus journey, what does it look like to a young person? It's the basics that we know all passengers want for all of the satisfaction work that they do. It's around reliability, the buses turning up on time, being able to get on board, but it's also around cleanliness, comfort, the drivers treating them well. It's also around the technology being available, so that's things like charging points, Wi-Fi, so they can stream music. But it's also bigger than that. It's around letting the young person know why they should use the bus and why it's a good choice for them, and almost making the young people aware what is available already and what is coming along. And in terms of the improvements that young people would like to see, again, it reinforces what we know from the majority of passengers, you know, better information, better value, being able to use technology more reliability will help everyone. Young people want to see it just as much as everyone else does as well. And I mean, I'm not going to labour the points, but these were the kind of outtakes of the research that we did, and what we're saying we'd like to see for young people, which we do feel will help passengers generally. So it's let people know what's available, how things work, so they can use them independently and intelligently and feel confident, make things better, and look at the fares for young people. Because just my final point that I'll make is we did a launch event in Birmingham in February, and we had some young people along, and we had the head of bus and taxi from the DFT there, and this young woman, I think she was 15, put her hand up and asked a question, and she just said, could I just ask you, what does £2.30 actually mean to you, to the head of bus and taxi at the DFT? She was like, she's like, it's a cup of coffee, isn't it? She was so assertive, she was brilliant. She was like, it's a cup of coffee that you don't think about, isn't it? And she was like, yeah. She's like, that is almost a quarter of my pocket money that I have to work to earn. It's a lot of money, and it's what I have to pay for a 10-minute journey to get into town, and I'm at college. Does that feel fair? And you kind of can't argue with that, really, can you? Particularly when it's a grotty bus and a look from the driver that makes you feel about that big. So plenty of room for improvement, and I'm happy to answer lots of questions later on.
Thank you, Louise. You must have sent that research to Jeremy Corbyn for his recent policy announcement, or pledge, should I say. Before you go, we might just have time for one or two questions. We've got one there. If we can get a mic down here, if you just wait for them. It's behind you. Got it. There you go. If you just start with your name and where you're from first.
Mohammed Shah, Calderdale Council. The data you have, did you analyse it for different socioeconomic backgrounds of the kids that you collected the data from, or is it simply just the age and that's the only thing you're looking at?
We've looked at some other variables within it. So we've looked at sort of urban versus rural. We've looked at age in more detail. We've looked at what they're doing now. We haven't actually looked at it by socioeconomic grade. There's potentially scope for us to do that. The biggest differences that we saw were around sort of availability of the bus network where they are, and surprisingly that, you know, if there are more buses, then generally there's greater experience and more positive information. But there is scope for doing further analysis within the data. It's quite a big data set.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you.
So this is really going to test my ability to fill. So we are having a modal change from bus to bike. As many of you will probably know, in the last sort of year or so, in many of our cities in the UK, we've had an influx of dockless bike schemes. We have one coming in Leeds. In the next couple of weeks, OFO is launching here in Leeds. And Adam Rose from OFO is here to tell us all about it. And not only is he here, but we also have a bike here, which is just at the back of the room there. So we've got a bit of a demo.
Would you mind bringing that?
And we just need to...
If I shut that, is it going to go haywire?
Probably, yeah.
I'll lay it on top of gingerly.
It's going to work.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, just bear with me.
Yeah.
It's not living nice. It was upset, but it was
Not full screen. Your presentation.
in frozen. Yeah, I'm in presentation mode. Sorry, classic technical issues from a technology company. Oh gosh, what's going on here? Why won't that come out?
Is it in PowerPoint? Or is it
It's in PowerPoint and it's in presentation mode, but it's yeah, exactly. There we go. Right, yeah, it's having a little bit of a freak out. I just lost my mouse. Strange. I go all around the country plugging this in, and I never have a problem with it. Yeah, and it just takes my mouse away. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's not liking something. Do you have it on? I emailed you the presentation. What is that? No. Sorry, it's now having a real proper think about it.
Should we try out my machine?
I can email it straight to this, whoever this is, or it's me. It's like crashed my computer now. Yeah, I can. If it will let me do anything. I'm on the internet. I'm on the Wi-Fi. Oh gosh.
I need some holding music.
Yeah. Right. So email address.
Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T. Dot L-O-W-E. How about you? Mike's. At ODI Leeds.
I-D-I.
ODI. Leeds.org. Yep.
Do you have the...
It's emailing.
I've got it on here.
He's got it on there, which might be quicker, yeah.
Have you got... what can you connect with?
I can connect with the display board. I've got
I'll give you a thing back.
Thank you. You do have it on here now. Apparently, you should have. If you refresh that, you should have it there. No, I'm Adam Rose. Yeah, it just sent. Yeah, Adam Rose. There we go. Yeah, no subject. Yep. That's the one.
So we're back. We're back up and running. Adam has just assured us that it won't be this difficult to get a bike. So off we go. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you. My mic's down, isn't it? This happens all the time in our London offices. We always joke how we're a tech company that can't even hold a video conference call. There we go. Here we are. Good stuff. Right. Don't need to wait for the mic to come back up. So there we go. I'm Adam Rose. I'm the operations manager for OFO in Sheffield and Leeds. So we currently have a live operation in Sheffield, but I'm in the process of launching Leeds. My background is I've been a cycle trade entrepreneur and a cycle retail operations manager, and been in the cycle trade for about 20 years now. And then I've come over to OFO to work on the newest emerging and sort of largest influencing sector of the cycle trade that almost we've ever seen. And it's nice because it crosses a few bridges and sort of comes into the transport sector as well, rather than just being retail. So I'll explain a little bit about OFO first, if that's okay. So this is a little bit school classroom, but can I have a quick show of hands for those who've heard of us? Who's heard of OFO? Fantastic, good. Oh, there we go. That was going to be my next question, but I didn't want ahead of the rest of you. Oh, there we go. A bit louder, please. I didn't quite hear that.
Very good quality of bicycle compared to some of their competitors.
Okay, good. Well done. Very diplomatic. Okay, so we'll come back to that afterwards. So just a few slides on what we're about. So improving travel and optimizing public services. We call ourselves the last mile provider. We're not trying to replace trains. We're not trying to replace buses entirely. We're not trying to replace existing public modes of transport. We're trying to link them up a little bit better. And we've got strong data to show that that's the case. So getting to the bus stop, getting to the train station, and then having the ability to leave the bike there without having to worry about locking it, worrying about whether it's going to be there when you get back, is kind of the boon of this system. Lowering carbon emissions is a very handy byproduct by getting more bums on bikes and then providing equal services to users around the globe. So we make a commitment to the councils that we work with to supply bikes to areas of the cities that we operate in where the demographic maybe is not so sort of cycling inclined, and there's more chance of our bikes being sort of vandalised or damaged, but we will carry on ploughing bikes into that area, accepting slightly higher losses in order to try and encourage cycling in areas that don't have a history of it. We're very global, so we're here in the UK. We've been in the UK now for almost exactly a year. The company was founded in 2014 in China. Peking University in Beijing, 4 students had the bright idea of painting some bikes brightly coloured, putting some signs on them saying please use us and sticking them in the middle of the campus, and the idea was that they would just use around the campus by the students and the faculty. This works really nicely actually, and they posted security guards at intervals around the campus in order to ensure that the bikes never left the campus. And once people got the gist, got the idea, it was a massive success, and OFO was born. They scaled using a bit of technology, and we're now in China, we're in North America, we're present in every sort of major city in Europe, just about, Kazakhstan, India, we're all over the place now. And actually, sorry, in the UK, we are operating in Cambridge, Oxford, Norwich, Sheffield, and soon to be Leeds on the 15th of May. And we're also in London, obviously, in boroughs of, this changes all the time, so Hackney, Islington, City of London, Shoreditch, and there's another, which I forget, sorry. And hopefully more to come soon. We're expanding throughout London all the time. Just a couple of nice little stats. So in China, we're huge in China. So we have cities in China that have close to 1 million OFOs. And there's a lot more competition in China than there is in the UK. So that's amongst other dockless bike share providers. But we have 1 million of these bikes from our company. And it's at that kind of scale that you really start to impact on air quality and start to impact on congestion. So a nice little stat there that 19 out of 20 major cities have seen a reduction in congestion, and we've seen consistent reports of an air quality improvement of 5% in the cities that we operate in China as well. How to OFO? Okay, so it can be simple, but then there are some nuances, so I'm happy to take questions on those at the end as well. So find a bike, use your eyes, they're bright yellow. That's one of the things that most authorities like about us. We're pretty easy to see from the public perspective. Or use the app. So if you open up the app, you can see all the bikes that are live in the city there, as well as all the preferred parking zones. You can't reserve a bike. We find that that diminishes the user experience a little. If they go to a bike, it's been reserved by someone else, it's not got there yet. So you just walk to your closest bike and unlock it. Scan the QR codes. There's a QR code on the back of the mudguard there, and there's a QR code just on the locking mechanism as well. If you scan that with your phone, with an Apple phone or with a QR reader, then it'll take you straight to the app download site. It's a free app. There's 4 bits of information, and this is fairly key because this is how we capture our data. So it's a telephone number, it's an email address, it's a name, and a credit or debit card. The credit or debit card ensures that the system is only open to 16-year-olds or above. Once you put in those 4 bits of information, and the first time I did it, it was in London at night. It was raining a little bit, and I think it took me about less than a minute, the first time I ever came across it. Once you put in those bits of information, you're registered. You're a registered user. That's all the information that we'll ever ask of you. You then scan the QR code again, and it will automatically unlock via Bluetooth. If you don't have Bluetooth or you don't want to give it access to Bluetooth, there's 4 keys on the back there. The app will message you a number, and you just tap that number in. But generally, way over 90% of our rides are open via Bluetooth, so it's nice and automatic. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. And then you ride. One of our taglines is ride anywhere, and that really is ride anywhere, within reason. And then once you're there, park the bike responsibly by putting the kickstand down and not blocking any highways or pavements, and then lock the bike. You slide the lock shut. When we talk about locking the bike, we don't mean lock the bike to anything. We mean just to lock it up so that it's there ready for the next user to come across and use. So that's some of what I just explained there. The car shape is a parklet. We drop these into, you've actually got quite a few in Leeds, so if you're from Leeds, you're used to seeing these already. So we have some OFO branded ones just to make a point that you can park sort of 20 odd bikes in the space of one car. We constantly in bike share world get called clutter, and we think that people often forget just how much car clutter there is kicking around on the roads that we just kind of turn a blind eye to. There's some geofence rules. So on the app, there's a geofence area that's clearly marked. I've just finished working on the Leeds one now, so it's that's complete. You're allowed to ride outside of the geofence. There's no problem with that. If you want to go for a massive epic ride, that's not a problem at all. We encourage that, in fact. But what we would ask is that you don't end the ride out there. Or if you do end the ride out there at a cafe or what have you, then you bring the bike back inside the geofence at the end of your ride. We do have users that take the bike outside of geo. And when that happens, you receive an in-app notification and a text message to say, you're outside the geo, that's fine, but please bring the bike back within 12 hours. That bike is then frozen to that user for 12 hours. No one else can use it and then possibly ride it even further away. If that user doesn't ride it back within 12 hours, then it's frozen completely. We get notified and our operations team go around and sweep up the bikes that have gone outside of the geo zone and bring them back into the centre. That user then also receives a deduction of user points, which is barely even a slap on the wrist. We are talking about possibly introducing a reclamation fee for having to go out and pick these bikes up, especially the ones that really go a long way out. Those are those heroes that like to go for a really big ride. Our approach. So the bike here, I keep feeling like I'm tied up to things, but I'm not. Short on time. This will be here at the back, so I can demonstrate this later on. This model is a little bit out of date now, so we've updated quite a few things on here. So I'll quickly talk through this one. A couple of minutes left. So we now have hub brakes instead of the V brakes pictured here. So hub brakes are far more consistent in different weather, in the wet basically. There's an alarm on the lock. We have ergonomic grips. We have a 3-speed Sturmey Archer gear system. It's an internal hub system, so there's nothing to be messed around with. The chain's covered in a ceramic lubrication, powder lubrication, so there's no oil there either. So even though there's a full chain guard, there's very little mess and also very little maintenance from our side of things. The seat post has got a lever on the bottom and is hydraulically adjusted, so you can just adjust the height of the seat post there with one hand whilst you're riding along if you like. We've got a sturdy basket with, it's a 5k limit. It will take more than 5k, but there's a 5k limit on there to put your bags and bits and pieces in. Wide platform Welgo pedals with a good rubbery platform on there. Full mud guards, unlike some of our competitors. Solid rubber tyres. We have to have solid rubber tyres, obviously. The downside of that is a slightly harsher ride. The plus side is you get the joy of riding through smashed glass and not having to worry about it. We have lights front and rear, so we have a dynamo front hub attached to an LED dynamo front light, which comes on when you ride, obviously, and then it stays on, sorry if I blinded anyone, it stays on at junctions for a short period of time just for safety. We have a solar-powered rear light, which is always funny, but there's a small battery in there that charges up, obviously. It's light sensitive and movement sensitive, so once it's got its charge, it only comes on what is actually required. Low standover, so very easy to get onto the bike, kickstand, and then the technology bit, if you like. I'll just open up my app. So that's the app. That's some bikes that are kicking around Sheffield right now, all the little yellow dots. All I do is just click on lock. I scan the QR code, whether it be that one. Hold on. Either one of them works the same. Takes a couple of seconds, and there we go, it's open. I pop the kickstand up, I ride away. When I'm done, I literally park the bike up again, make sure it's somewhere that's not in anyone's way and is on public land, crucially, and then I slide that lock shut again. When I slide that lock shut, it then notifies my phone how long I've been using it. It's 50 pence per 30 minutes. So at that point, it then charges me directly from my debit card for how long I've been using it. You can pre-charge your account up, or it'll debit each time. There's not masses of difference. And that's how you OFO. I'll just quickly run through the last slide, so you might have time to read all of these. Just some of the feedback that we get from the councils that we work with. We're very, very council focused. We won't go anywhere without full permission from the council and a full blessing from any other local authorities. We work very closely with other stakeholders as well to make sure that we're accepted well in the cities that we operate in. And we've set some standards, and this is where we really set ourselves apart from any of our competition. So we have a call centre, there's a number on the bike that you can call, unlike any of our competition. We try to redistribute bikes and rebalance bikes as emission-free as possible. So we use a trailer with an e-bike, actually built in Leeds here. We do have vans that deal with the outside of geofence bikes, but for everything centrally, it's a trailer. We have a decent-sized ground team. We're a living wage employee, above the living wage actually. We can share our data with local authorities when appropriate, and we work with local bike shops, and we're accredited by the only accreditation that's currently in place from Bike Plus. And that's the lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adam. I've got the first question. When do you launch in Leeds?
15th of May. 15th
of May, excellent.
15th of May, yeah.
Are there any other questions? You've had one question already, so we'll go for someone else at the back. We may come back to you because we're a bit short of time.
Yep. Thank you. Jean Siak from Leeds City Council. We are really excited with this bike scheme coming into the town. But my worry is about the safety. And my question is, because when this bike will be in town, a lot of people with no experience in cycling will be using them. And especially people in the night out, because it will be a cheap way to go home. So my problem is that I've read all your notification. I didn't see any road safety message. Do you plan to have like a road safety message in the application or anything like a banners, something like that?
Yeah, in the application there is, it's a tiny bit tucked away admittedly, but there's a section that tells you how to OFO, and that goes over some of our recommendations. Don't use headphones, wear a helmet, make sure the lights are working, the brakes are working before you set off, etc., etc. So those are there. They're not as obvious as they could be. We use splash screens to educate, and that's something that we've done actually, is to sort of inform people on the 3 key safety points. The police are very aware that the bikes may be ridden whilst people are under the influence. However, it's a bit of a catch-22 because they'd actually rather they were riding the bikes than obviously driving a car. So although we don't encourage it, we make sure the bikes are available there for that. And we also partner with the adult and child bikeability and bike training providers for the city to make sure that we're offering a solution for those that want more confidence riding a bike.
Okay, we've probably got time for one more question. So we'll go in the far end of the front row there. Sorry.
I'll be available at the end, so I can answer all your questions there if you like.
Thank you. I'm from the University of Leeds, Eric Thomason. My question is how you target the areas that you choose to roll out your services in, because I don't know whether you're familiar with the propensity to cycle tool that's been developed in the UK, which looks at areas where cycling could be encouraged, and it would be really interesting to liaise with you to align the propensity to cycle tool with the availability of technologies and services to do that.
Yeah, no, sounds interesting. I've not heard of it, no. We have a bit of a stab ourselves there's obvious areas where there's going to be a high density, train stations, colleges, student halls, and the like. We work with the council to help us work on those areas and to put hub positions in place. But then crucially, we constantly monitor heat mapping. So we have a daily heat mapping capability that we always look at seasonally and through different holiday periods to work out where our hotspots are and then move the bikes there accordingly. And it quite often throws up things that we hadn't thought of. So it's a constantly flowing setup that we have as far as an operations point of view, and we always make sure the bikes are where they need to be eventually.
Okay, one final question here, again on the front row, Paul.
Quick question.
Yeah.
You partially covered it talking about your heat mapping. What data do you share with the city, and what else do you use the data for?
So we only capture, and this goes back to what I said before, we only capture a name, an email address, a telephone number, and then a card contact. So we don't really know who you are. We don't know where you live. We don't know how old you are. We don't know what sex you are. We don't know what you do at the weekend. But people are aware that it's a bit big brotherish, but actually when local authorities ask us for data, and we will only share with people that we really feel like are keen for it and are obviously work with them to make sure that it's done very anonymously, so that they don't get the data that has got names attached. They purely just get the ride data. As far as the deeper data, there's not actually that much there that we can do with it. It's all about rides. It's all about where people cycle. There's not much more to glean from it. We're working with Leeds University. We've set up an agreement there where they're going to analyse some of our data and produce some usable reports out of it, and we'll partner with them to do that very closely.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may. Yeah.
Okay. Paul Connell from ODI Leeds. Will that data be made open? Leeds City Council is open by default. We think you should share it all with everybody.
No, it won't be open. It's commercially sensitive, so we will share it with the council by all means.
Yeah.
We'll share it with universities. We'll share it with study groups. We'll share it with cycling advocacy groups that need it and require it, but it will never be fully open because it's a bit too close to home for our competition. They'd love it.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to ask you every day.
That's fine. That's fine.
So
That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, that's
all right. Thank you very much, Adam.
No problem. Thank you.
So a couple of things on that. So Adam Rose from OFO will be around for the with the bike. Will be around for the 2 o'clock kind of open house. And Paul's kindly agreed over the lunch break to remodel Munro House as a BMX track. So you can have a go with that.
I think if you just on the point of public safety, I think if you were to drink and ride a bike, would you ride a beeping yellow bike?
So our last lightning talk of this first part of the morning session is Adam, who's going to talk about the Westfield Pod and AQL.
No, thank you very much. So, so where to start? So, I'm Adam. My company is called AQL. I founded it 20 years ago. And we've been on the internet journey for 20 years plus. Before I founded the company, I built the cyber teams for the UK MOD. So I'm approaching things from a secure by design principle. And that doesn't necessarily mean secure as in lock all the data away, but it might mean make sure that the data that we have we can trust and it has the right integrity, it has the right provenance. So it's looking at the transition of how we treat data from how we used to treat data. So doctor-patient confidentiality, lock the data away to protect the patient, to now share the data so that we can gain insights across a number of different patients to benefit them all. What do we do? So we are wholesale as a company. We don't produce end-user products at all. That makes it difficult to sell. But what we decided to do nearly 20 years ago is we would limit ourselves to delivering services at the API level or at the open protocol level. So standard protocols, standard APIs. Things that we do, we deliver a lot of the banking passcodes via mobile messaging in the UK, again, over our APIs. We do a lot of the communications from the NHS for patient reminders over our APIs. We handle all the communications in the UK for the world's largest taxi company via our APIs. And so what we do is we build the scalable building blocks that can support innovation and get it to market quicker. We don't work in any one particular vertical, because if we worked in a particular vertical or a particular specialism, the partners in that vertical or that specialism would say, we don't really want to work with you because you might end up competing with us. So we don't do pretty. We don't do end user retail stuff at all. And so as we've built up the infrastructure that we've needed to support massive text messaging platforms, massive IoT platforms, and IoT is something we've been doing for over 10 years in the data space and 20 years in the signaling and messaging space. We interface with other parties to deliver that. But the infrastructure that we've built, we then needed to build something to contain it. By legacy, we're a company based in Leeds. All of our equipment used to be based in London because that's where all the fibre used to land in the UK. And Leeds was basically plugged into London. There wasn't any point in putting something in Leeds because if London failed, all the stuff in Leeds would fail as well. But as time went on, what we managed to do was build a data centre slap bang on the main fibre lines that flow as a figure of 8 around the country and flow through Leeds. So we built the data centre, and this catalysed the creation of the first internet exchange outside of London. And so when we built that, again, 2009, that created an autonomy in Leeds away from London. And it created a local routing hub, which meant that when you tried to download your Netflix or your iPhone updates or look at YouTube, rather than that traffic flow all the way down to London and back up or to Amsterdam and back up, it's delivered locally within the city from networks or from platforms within the city itself. So we've created this local routing engine, which keeps traffic within the region. It doesn't leak out when it doesn't need to, because if you let the internet work on its own accord, it'll leak your traffic overseas, it'll leak it down to London and back. And that's costly because you're trundling it around the country, but it's also very inefficient. So by creating this hub, we've created what is a platform for enabling 5G network communications. And 5G, it's probably a buzzword you've all heard. 5G is basically a way of doing things better in mobile. And it's a way of slicing up networks to provide different qualities of service for humans, for autonomous vehicles, for healthcare, for citizen safety, for tracking bicycles. And to do that in an efficient way, you've got to keep the traffic local. So say, for example, you wanted to coordinate a number of different systems, autonomous systems moving around the city. They can't just all talk to each other. They all need to know what every single device in that region or that area is doing. They also need to know what the traffic flow in and out of the region is. So to do that, you need very fast, very optimized networks. So we've built the fundamental layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, if you look at the OSI model of that network infrastructure, and the mobile network operators have started to build on top of that. We're very pleased to say we also have the 5G test frequencies assigned to us by Ofcom in the UK, so we can roll out 5G test services ourselves and 5G infrastructure. So what we've done here, not the flying man, that's a separate thing. You can ask me about that afterwards. But what we've done here is we've worked with the University Institute of Transport Studies, the City Councils, Leeds and Bradford, some private sector members, to create a platform for autonomy. So this is its raw form, as supplied by the manufacturer Westfield, comes factory fitted with software to make it autonomous at what we've called level 4, which allows it, if you program the city into it, to make its way around without hitting stuff. We're not interested in operating it at level 4. What we're interested in doing is removing that top layer of control software, taking it back to level 2. Level 2 is human-managed autonomous platforms. The reason we want to do that is all that I want to do as AQL, or my team want to do, is to manage the fundamental safety switch on this. So we're managing the off button, and that's a binary, that's a Boolean, it's a naught or a 1. It's a go or a stop. And we don't want to get involved in the innovation above that because we want to enable it. So we want to work with innovative software companies, individual coders, because I believe that the next generation of transport software is not going to be delivered by transport companies. I think that it's going to be delivered by innovators who are looking at being spatially aware in different ways. So it might be medical imaging software specialists. It might be virtual reality or augmented reality software specialists. There's going to be, it might be, for example, gaming specialists. But by creating this platform, removing the top layer and creating open standards interfaces to allow these fundamental systems within this pod to be controlled, we can essentially allow it to be tested and played with safely in a controlled environment, in controlled parts of the city, to see if we can do something a little bit better. Because it's all about integrated transport. So it's not just about, can we make it navigate safely? And that's obviously important. But can we make it navigate safely and dovetail with delivering you to your train on time, or delivering you to a football match on time, and making sure that it's actually in the right place, in the right part of the city, cognizant of the traffic flows and the demand at the right time. So we can't do that joined up bit. All we can do is build the platform and then look at who's innovating in that space above it. So, for example, Leeds Institute of Data Analytics have been doing work with Telefonica on anonymized mobile data and looking at end-to-end travel behavior. So that's not just how many people get on and off at Leeds Station, but actually where did they start their journey and how can we help make that better? So this, for me, is, again, another platform. We're sort of this wholesale lower layer of the pod, and we want to work with developers and innovators to do something quite special. So come and see me afterwards. I think we're going to have a short break, and you can make your way downstairs and we can see how many people can get a pod. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adam. We've probably got time for maybe 2 questions here, if anyone has any. So there's one here. So it's a little bit of admin. So what we're going to do straight after this, after we've done these questions, is Adam and a couple of his team will be downstairs outside the front doors to Munro House with the pod to answer any questions that you have. They'll be there for the coffee break, which we've extended, which is going to be a 30-minute coffee break. Don't take your coffee down there because we'll end up with mugs all over Duke Street. So Adam and his team will be there to answer any further questions you might have, and you can get in the pod, have a photo, all that sort of stuff, and then we'll be back here for 12 o'clock.
There's a challenge. Everybody needs a photo with the pod.
Yeah.
I want everybody to get a photo with the pod and tweet it. That would be fantastic.
So Alison.
Hi, I'm Alison Pilling from Transport for the North. So technically fascinating, but the bit that always kind of bothers me is how does this fit with policies about how we want our cities and other areas to be? Because I have this nightmare vision in about 20 years that nobody ever gets out of a pod because they're travelling around doing all their work in a pod, and people who walk around don't get any opportunity because the world's gone pod crazy. How does, how might policy change as a result?
Okay, so let me draw an analogy. So, for example, at the moment, government's really keen to super connect us all, and they've got an aspiration to dig fibre. And digging fibre takes time, so they're also willing to support wireless connectivity in the shorter term to fill in that gap. Some of this technology is about allowing the city to kind of move with the times, even on a temporary basis. So it's looking at where do we need to invest in permanent infrastructure and where can we alleviate the pinch points before that. And suddenly when you end up with whole loads of these going in a particular place and people almost living in them, then we know there's another problem that needs to be solved by the next generation of transport technology. One of the things that's about living in them, which is interesting, is I believe there's 2 different kinds of bandwidth we're going to serve to these pods. One is the low latency integrity checking bandwidth, which is going to them to basically check that all the systems in the pod are working how they should, so that when we say stop, it's going to stop. And also that all the others in the vicinity, if we say stop, they're going to stop, or if we say go left, they're going to go left. But also delivering media, because the question as to how these are going to be monetized is still not been answered. And so, for example, if you sign in using your Google Plus account or your Facebook account, there's going to be advertisers that really want to deliver you content. And if I was an advertiser really wanting to deliver you content to the pod, I might slow down the pod as well, just so that you get a little bit more media time. So there's a whole load of interesting societal stuff that playing with this kind of technology is going to bring out. But I just feel that giving it to transport people, when I say transport people, I don't mean that in some kind of disrespectful way. I mean, I think we need to look at all other areas of technology as to how this can be beneficial. If that answers your question, sort of.
Great. I think for the interest of time, we'll probably have to call it there for questions. But obviously, Adam and his team are going downstairs now to be with the pod. So we're going to be on a coffee break now. If you can be back here for 12, please. That will start the second part of the lightning talks. You all obviously won't be able to fit in our 4-person lift. So you will be able to go past the lift, take the stairs all the way down to the ground floor, and someone will point you in the right direction. So please make your way back here for 12. Thank you. Thanks, Adam. That was great. Lightning talks. Please make your way in, grab your seats again. We've got another 5 to get through, and we're determined to finish the morning session on time at 1 o'clock so we can all get fed. Hope you all had a chance to have a coffee, have a chat, and some of you had a chance to go downstairs and have a look at the Westfield pod with Adam and the AQL guys. So thanks a lot to them for bringing that. As I mentioned before, we're going to get going with the 5 talks, and without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tom and Dave from Passenger.
Hello. Hello, is this on? Yep, we're on. Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Quay. I work with our engineering director, Dave Holbert, at a company called Passenger, where we work at at both ends of application development with transport data. I say both ends. I'm talking about the pretty end, as Adam described it in his talk earlier, interacting with kind of users and developing interfaces that people actually want to use, and also at the back end where the data is managed and processed and actually sort of serving up all of the APIs to the front ends that people interact with. So we spend a lot of time working with users. So as Louise talked about in her presentation about the work with young people, the research that they've done, we spend a lot of time looking at feedback and working with focus groups on how to iterate the applications to develop them in the way that people want. What do passengers want? I mean, ultimately the outcome is often we want TfL, we want the simplicity, we don't want to have to think, we want the coolness of Uber, and we work in bus and light rail, which, as the research suggests, is quite a challenge to actually make that feel as cool as Uber and as easy to interact with as the likes of TfL. Ultimately, passengers want to get somewhere, and they want to do it without thinking. Everyone has this computer in their pocket, so our approach is let's use it. Let's use this to the best we can, and look at ways to do it with the computer rather than with the infrastructure that is surrounding us. So we work across the north. So we've got deployments of our mobile app product with East Yorkshire and Hull, with Blackpool in the east, and with Transdev across the Lancashire and Yorkshire region, who come down into Leeds as well. So we've got deployments now from as far south as Bournemouth, where we're based, up to Scotland in sort of Edinburgh and Glasgow region. So last year we went from 2 operators to around 19 different operators. Across the platform we had about 6.5 million journeys made with mobile tickets. We had, I think, 108,000 happy customers, so that was people that were actively using the service every day in the last 30 days. Now that's actually gone up to 150,000 now, so it's a growing platform, and it's something that we're rolling out further and further.
Thanks, Tom. So the passenger system is, a lot of it's based around apps and this user-facing shiny thing. That's what we have in mind most of the time when we're building things. We also have other things that are going on. We have APIs, we have websites, intranets, and sort of emerging technologies as well, like voice, wearables, and all that kind of fancy things. But a lot of what we do isn't the shiny stuff as well. And there's a lot of data input, data managing, stuff that goes on beforehand. We take all sorts of data sources, we work with operators to train them and to help them get their data, make it more useful. We provide tools to help them manage that data, put in all sorts of information, work with their suppliers, their hardware suppliers, for example, to get real-time data, pull in disruption information and all those sort of things, do processing and then turn it into nice APIs that we can consume, and in a couple of cases we have third parties that consume those APIs as well. So the core of what we do, we say, is mobile apps. That's what we sell on a day-to-day basis. And there's good and bad things about mobile apps. A lot of the good things are easy for us to enumerate and think about. It's quite a challenge coming up with all the bad ones, because that's kind of what we do. So, some of the good things about mobile apps, over and above sort of smart cards or other ways of paying for transport, is the simplicity. People can get on a bus very quickly with a mobile app. The children groups and dogs doesn't mean dogs are mobile apps. It means you can use a mobile app ticket. You can customize a mobile app ticket to include group travel or travel for you plus some extras. Whereas some forms of travel, such as contactless, you can't do that so easily. And there's issues as well with mobile. Whereas paper tickets don't run out of battery, mobile phones do sometimes. A lot of bus companies are putting in USB chargers into buses, which is quite handy. Signal as well can be a problem. A lot of things work offline, but some things they don't work as nicely as they should. And there's always some kind of technology barrier, which means that some people won't have access to this. So then contactless comes along, and a lot of bus companies are working with contactless. I'm sure you're all familiar with using contactless in coffee shops and Tesco and all those kind of places. A lot of transport companies are starting to use contactless as well. And TFN said earlier, there's a lot of research and a lot of progress being made in terms of contactless in transport. So the UK Card Association has come up with these 3 different types of contactless for transport. So very briefly, we have this, can't read it from here, sorry, single pay-as-you-go, which is similar to what you have in Costa, where you tell the bus driver, I would like this, and then you buy it, and then you get that. As we heard earlier, especially with young people, there's this interaction with the bus driver in this case. You still have to know what you're doing. And here in this little diagram, we've got single please, and we're making it seem very easy, but sometimes that's not so easy. Model 2 is aggregate pay-as-you-go. This is what a lot of transport companies are aspiring to. Some people are starting to research and roll out. So this is where you can tap multiple times and you get your account-based ticketing or your best fare at the end of the day or the end of the week. And this is what T4L have with their Oyster. And then lastly, we have the free purchase model, which is often used for things like season passes and longer term things where you can buy something up front and then you can use it. We see that a bit with trains and other transport, but it isn't used a huge amount in buses from what we've seen. So the tap on, tap off contactless, this kind of account-based ticketing, automatic fare calculation, all this kind of thing, says it reduces friction. It's so easy to use the same payment card that you use to buy your coffee to get on the bus. You don't have to install an app to be able to get on a bus or something like that. They have other things. There's a no driver interaction potentially. And you don't have to think about it. It's not complicated. You can just, if you trust it, you can just get on and use it. But that trust has to be there for someone to actually want to be able to do that. So there's the unknown fare as well. And also the loyalty and retention. If a bus operator gets some information about a customer from a smart card or a mobile app, they can find out a lot more about that person and help them plan their travel a lot better because of their repeat usage and because they might have their email address. They might have the history of their journey plans or their favourite stops to be able to suggest better services for them to use. Whereas with contactless, it's very anonymous, which is good for data privacy, but means that end user experience can be poor. And there's just no opportunity to nudge people on contactless to use different routes or use off-peak services, that kind of thing, which you can get on other channels such as mobile, where we can say, hey, it looks like you're generally travelling around 9 o'clock. If you wait a bit later, you can get a cheaper ticket or something like that. So we've seen a lot of bus companies introducing contactless alongside mobile apps. So when you have contactless and mobile apps, in theory, the ideal is you have the best of both worlds. You have all the good things from mobile apps and all the good things from contactless. So this is just the same thing as the end. So in theory, you don't get just all the good things from both. You get some of the bad things as well. But there's a lot of good things that you can get from one side and the other side as well. But what we're more interested in is when things come together. So the contactless and mobile together allows us to do other things as well. So one of the things that we're looking at is simulated tap on and tap off. So using mobile data along with the contactless to be able to collect more data for the operators to be able to provide better fares and reduce the amount of infrastructure that's needed, so you don't need lots of hardware on buses.
So how many people here know what that logo is, or how many people use it? Okay, so this is Monzo. This is effectively what they are calling a challenger bank. So if you look at the world of banking and you see these very well-funded startups in that area, there's a lot of contactless cards coming into the market that have a companion app. And now that's really starting to change the way that banking is working. I think if you sort of have a look at these things, you see the interplay between the contactless and the mobile apps is really starting to actually sort of augment the experience and start to help people to understand their finances in a really sort of timely manner, change their behavior through having notifications pop up shortly after making transactions, tapping a card to pay in the store, instant notification to the phone, and everything's kind of coming together into the application which people are looking at straight away rather than seeing a bank statement towards the end of the month. Now, Monzo is just one example. There's quite a few examples of these, but the point is that it's starting to disrupt that banking world and helping people to manage their finances a little bit better. I look forward to the day when they have a joint account so that I can see what my wife is buying. So what we're starting to talk about here is Monzo for buses, really. So we've sort of got this convergence of mobile apps, which is giving people that experience, that information, the real-time, the journey planning functionality, that opportunity to interact with the bus companies, feed back to them what's working, what's not working, and also this ease of payment that doesn't require a battery or a signal to actually get on the bus, and all of the aggregation that takes care of the pain of working out fares for you. So we're starting to sort of bring those two things together in terms of the way that we are thinking based on what we are seeing around Monzo applied to, or that idea behind Monzo and what's going on in that banking world with it being applied to public transport. You jump on the bus, you tap your card on the reader, you take a seat, and then instantly you see your travel information on your companion app to that service. Now, these are apps that we are already building. We've got a demo of this stuff over on the stand, so if anyone's really interested, you're more than welcome to come and have a look at that for us. But what we're seeing is that kind of that relationship building between the users and the bus companies, effectively. So what we're calling the humble bus, we're seeing it become slightly more cool, and people wanting to use it more and more to actually take their journeys. So contactless will get them on the buses, apps will keep them there. So that's how.
Thank you to you both. I think in the interest of time, we're probably going to say there's not time for questions now, but people can see where you are. That's where you're going to be for the afternoon slot, camped in the corner there. So if anyone does have any further questions about that contactless and mobile proposition, feel free to go and speak to the guys about that. Thank you very much. Now, our next speaker, there you go. Can I ask you to click that on, just sort of on your slip, yeah, and then hold that. So, as many of you will probably know Transdev as a large operator in the north of England and one of the bigger three in Leeds. But what you may not know is they've launched a new crowdsourced routes proposition called Vermoos. So Rebecca Burnett from Vermoos is here to tell us all about it. Click that on.
Hopefully this...
Flick the switch. There you go.
You can hear me better now. I'll try and stick to time. Depending on where you are and what you're looking at it for, you may or may not have heard of Vermoos, and some people, depending on exactly what you're looking at, you may think it does one thing and you may not know it does another. If you're in Ripon, for example, north of Harrogate, and you're of school age, you'll know very much that Vermoos is about home to school buses. Similarly, if you're travelling to schools in Skipton, that is what you will know it will do. If you're in Bradford and you're connected to some community centres there, you'll know that Vermoos is about taking trips out to destinations out of urban West Yorkshire into some other exciting places. I think But wherever you do see it and wherever you're from and whatever you're looking at it for, you should know that we promise two things through Vermoos. The first of that is go where you choose. This is about putting the customer first and asking them what they want to see from new buses, from new bus routes, or whether they're regular or one-off trips. And the second thing is the more that ride, the less you pay. We are crowdfunding bus trips. So the more people that are using them, again, whether it's a one-off or whether it's on a regular basis, people are paying less as more people come on board. And those two principles together, I think this is a bit of a first for the bus industry. And this is very much a bus company to solution to some bus industry problems, which I'll go through in just a moment. But it's probably helpful for those people who haven't heard of Vermoos if I sort of explain how it came to be and why we've developed this concept, this project that we're using to seek new opportunities. A couple of years ago, probably 18 months ago in Harrogate, my boss Alex Hornsby, Chief Exec of Transdev, and our team in Harrogate crowdfunded a home-to-school route to a school in Harrogate with the school and with the parents of the students involved, which was very much about putting the customers first and letting them create it, design it in the way that they want it to be, but also with this crowdfunding element that the more of them using it, the less they would pay. So if, let's say, 40 people came and said they would want to use this service, they would pay price X. If there was 60, it would be price Y, and there was a significant difference coming down to make sure that people knew if they helped us to bring more people on board, they would benefit financially from a reduced price as well. In a nutshell, that's where it started, and that was before Vermoos was even spoken about, but it was very successful. Customers felt like they really owned that product, that service, because they'd had a hand in building it. It's very successful and oversubscribed now. Creating that resolved a couple of issues for us. It took students off our 36 between Ripon and Harrogate, which is our sort of premier route, and resolved an overcrowding issue that we were experiencing at peak time. But it also provided a better service for those students, taking them direct to school with a limited stop service rather than into a town centre with a last mile walk at the end. So from that experience, the guys at Transdev thought, well, can we package this up into something that helps us seek out more of these sorts of opportunities? And can we then use that to address some of the problems we know we have in the industry of overcrowding in some places, constant calls from customers for more and better bus services, reduction in local authority funding, and the opportunity to use the fleet of vehicles that we already have more efficiently and more effectively outside of the peak period. And through that developed Vermoos as a project, a brand, an innovation and a concept to take out to help us seek more opportunities. And in some cases that is home to school, some cases it's home to work using the same models. It could also do pop-up trips to events and destinations, all of those bringing together these elements of demand responsive to your customers and crowdfunding as well. So whilst people say that Vermoos is an app, it is an app, but it's more about what we're doing with that app that is exciting. But just a word about the piece of technology. We've developed something with a startup app developer that is a one-stop shop for our customers. They can suggest trips to us on there. They can browse trips and filter by their location or the type of trips they want to see. They can buy the tickets, and it's a mobile ticketing platform as well. So our customers don't need to go away from that app to experience everything that they need to do to use our services. So as I said, it is not a piece of tech for the sake of that piece of tech. It is a solution to some bus industry issues. Transdev Blazefield, we are operating regular buses in the north of England, from Preston through to Scarborough, as far south as Leeds and Manchester, in this region. But what we've created here is a product that can be picked up by another company and used by them. So we have partners in Liverpool, Birmingham, Reading, Teesside, and soon to launch with some more. At the moment, mainly with independent operators, but we're speaking to some of the subsidiaries of the bigger groups in this country as well. The next announcement you'll see is us launching with First somewhere down south. And at the moment, we have 11 home-to-school routes in our own network. From next week, we'll have 2 home-to-work services as well. In Liverpool, you'll see 5 home-to-school services from September, all through this new Vermoos brand that we launched just a year ago now. And in our other places, we're seeking out more opportunities and having discussions about how Vermoos can help on a bigger scale with Mass Global, with Ticketmaster to discuss events, with the Campaign for National Parks to help get more people travelling to rural places out of their cars. But what I wanted to focus on, which is the last point I'm going to make, because I hope you'll remember it more than everything else, is what we're doing with data. And how we're using what our process is to get to the point where we can make a really good offer to our customers and then want to use it. The first part of that is really asking them what they want, but sometimes they don't know. So the second part of that is linking up with our destinations, whether it's a college, a school, or a business, to find out exactly where their customers live, using something as simple as Google Maps. This is data from Burnley College of how they're bringing in students to Burnley, and very clearly see some sort of lines of demand in that, and just putting that up for illustrative purposes really to tell you that we are using data for existing bus users but non-bus users as well, to find out where we can make the best offers to people, so that we have an offer of a route as a starting point, and for them then to come in and sort of feed into this very customer friendly process where they can have some input into that as well, and from that start to offer routes into central places from all over the patch. This is an example of a network we put together for some schools in Harrogate of 9 direct buses in and a couple of connecting service buses that already exist, which offers them something very comprehensive that they haven't ever had before. And finally, again, just an illustration of our first home to work route in Burnley for boohoo.com, the online clothing distributor, to help bring their staff that work 6 a.m, 6 p.m. shifts into that place. Vermoos isn't about replacing what's already there. It's very much about filling the gaps of where transport isn't meeting the needs of customers at the moment. We'll only replace something that's already there if we can make it better, but it really isn't about that. It's about filling gaps and asking people to go where they choose. Thank you very much.
We might have time for one question if there are any questions out there. If anyone wants to ask Rebecca anything. There we go. We've got Chris at the back there. We're getting a mic to you, Chris. If you just say your name, where you're from. Well, we already know, actually.
Chris Perry, Mars Global.
Yeah.
The question I've got is around how have you had to challenge and overcome any regulatory issues? Because in the bus industry, isn't, although it's deregulated, there are still quite a lot of regulations in place. And from my limited knowledge, doing innovative things can sometimes be challenging with old-fashioned regulations that were invented before this sort of stuff was thought about.
Yeah, I think the main difficulty we come up against when we're trying to do something regular like a home to school, a home to work, is the time frame. That actually you can establish very quickly whether people want something and that they're going to use it. But then from there, an 8-week wait while the traffic commissioner decides that you can do it is a bit of a burden. That's the main thing that we're coming up against. For some of the one-off sort of pop-up trips that we do, we can use private hire regulations to be able to offer them alongside a normal service. But at the same time as that, you've got UK hours, EU hours for your drivers. So yeah, there are a few barriers, but we haven't found them to be stopping anything that we've wanted to do so far.
Thank you, Rebecca.
All right, no problem. Yes.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to go back to, well, continue the theme of buses, sorry, and we're going to have Tony from Reading Buses, who's going to give us a 10-minute discussion on how a transport operator can get value out of opening up their data. So please welcome Tony.
Thank you. Is the mic okay? Yeah, that's good. Great. A happy Vermouth customer. So Reading Buses tried it last year, and we're going to do some more with it this year as well on the pop-up private hire basis. So really, myth busting. I'm not sure how many myths I'm going to bust in this, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about Reading Buses, what we're doing, and leave it for you to decide whether we've actually got anywhere. So a little bit about us. Reading Buses, municipal operator. We run just over 200 vehicles now. Substantial part of that fleet are environmentally friendly biogas operated single deck and double deck vehicles, and some hybrid vehicles in there as well. That represents getting on for half of our fleet now. Carry about 25 million passengers a year, turnover about 35 million. Known for operating a network of services around Reading, as it says on the tin, and they're colour-coded. So different routes have different coloured vehicles. All of the material, the infrastructure, the collateral relating to those services is also colour-coded. As I say, lots of them operated by gas, lots of them operating 24 hours a day. A couple of examples of recent vehicles, orange routes and royal blue routes. So as I say, our offer is very much about customer service, branded routes, emphasis on high quality vehicles. We have a very young fleet. The average age of the vehicles is about 5.5 years. So to achieve that, we're getting rid of about 10% of the fleet every year. And we like to innovate and improve. So everything about those vehicles, so looking at the orange vehicles, the orange theme continues to flow through the whole of the vehicle. You can see a tablet there on the desk arrangement, and a nice orange sofa just behind the stairs for people that want to travel in a group. We got so obsessed with this that the sofa actually has a leatherette texture that feels like an orange peel. I think we perhaps went a little over the top on that, but hey, it's good fun. And of course, there's an awful lot of kit on vehicles. Everything from the industry standard engineering pieces around the CAN bus that records what the vehicle itself is doing, and all of the things that we've put on, the ticket machine, driver telemetry that we're running, our CCTV systems, vehicle location systems, and spinning off from that the kind of things that interact with our customers. So we have audio, visual, real-time passenger information, and we have customer Wi-Fi available. And there's a lot of stuff that hangs around the vehicle as well. So whilst it's not moving around with the vehicle, it's linked to that vehicle, and we're collecting all of that information as well. And if you look at it, it actually begins to add up very quickly to big data that we've got available. So everything from, as I say, the ticket machines, which are online and real-time, the real-time passenger information, all of that back office that's feeding into the schedules that drive those systems, the payment systems, the sales information, the telematics, CCTV, and so on, all the way through. And really it's about what next. We're looking at things like seat occupancy. We're looking at things relating to the use of the charging facilities that we put on there, so people can plug in and repower phones, laptops, tablets, etc. So we're beginning to look at those sorts of things. Now, all of this data that we're collecting, we regard it in most contexts as being fitting into one of three groups. So the first is genuinely open data, stuff that we will make public. It's generally delivered via our suppliers rather than directly from us, but essentially it is our data that we've agreed is to be made available to anyone that needs it. So arrival predictions, locations, the fares information, the basic route data, the structure of our network and so on, all of that information, the vehicle details about what's actually operating on which route, all of that we push out there and say, make of it what you will. Then there's a second set of data which is open to people that have come and spoken to us, and we can see some value in making that information available to them. We might get something out of it, and they hopefully will also get something out of it. Those will generally be covered by some form of NDA or something like that to allow us to open that information up. And I'll say a little bit more about the tech lab and where that fits into that in a moment. And then there's a whole raft of data that is about us running the business. It's commercially confidential, but we will still open that up in the right circumstances. We see value in doing it. So work so far, developing an app and using that to provide the information to our customers that they need. And that same information that's driving the app, that is driving the website and providing the information is also of use to other people as well. And the slightly annoying Reading buses you're late bot, which is looking at our performance in terms of arrivals on a particular group of routes and helpfully tweeting us every time we are more than 5 minutes late arriving at the departure stops for those routes. But it is something that the users on that service are beginning to tap into and recognize as a resource. And as I say, it's nothing to do with us. It's something that has been purely developed on the back of the data that's out there as well. Another exciting initiative from some of the early discussions and the early partnerships that we've established is the concept of a tree strike detector. Double-deck buses, as they go along their routes, tend to bump into things. Trees that are overhanging the road are one of them. And when they first start hitting those trees, it's a nice friendly little tap from small branches furthest out into the road. If nothing's done about it, of course, those branches have a habit of getting bigger and the strikes become more intense, and the end result is £800 worth of upper windscreen damage if they're not cut back. So a chap called Connell has been working with us. He's developed a prototype device which you simply strap to the tree guard bar, and it detects the intensity and the frequency and the location of tree strikes, produces a hotspot map that you can then feed back into the local authority and get those cut down. That came out of some of the supported hack events that we've been involved in, and we will continue to be involved in those. We see it as an important way of actually getting ideas coming back to us. Some of the others that we talked about, seriously large 3D printing. A chap came to us and said, I think I could print panels, but I can't fit a printer big enough in my garage. We said, we have a much bigger garage than you have. Come and try and see what you can do. And we're starting to produce replacement panels, so we're not holding stock. We actually just produce them when they're required and use them. How am I doing? So next steps for us, we're looking at things like predicting short-term traffic volumes, feeding in multiple data sources using local authority data on traffic flows. And we're very keen to start looking at things like dynamic demand responsive transport systems and looking at ways of bringing the bus to the customer on semi-scheduled routes. So taking, if you like, the Vermeuse concept and doing it in real time. So there are challenges. Data consistency is one of them, and making sure that the data that is out there is kept up to date. Data doesn't always exist in the right formats, so you need to find ways of moving it around. And very much we're at the outer limits sometimes of our technical understanding of what's achievable and what can be done. But we keep pushing the expectations, we keep pushing our suppliers to come up with better ideas, and as long as we can stretch our ability to vision the outcomes, and find out what's possible, understanding what's going to be useful, then we can help to deliver new ways of using the data. It's always going to be a problem for us finding the resources to do it, but that's where those partnerships come in. It lets other people have a chance to play with it. I mentioned our tech lab. This final point, something we commissioned. It's a room that we created in our depot last year. It's not been formally launched yet, but there are already people using it. And what it is a room that can be accessed 24/7, gives access to our information. It's a working space. It's got a complete mock-up of all of the systems that are operating on the vehicle. You can see in through the doorway there, the front of a bus, with a destination display in the ticket machine and all of those other things. And people can test their ideas, their concepts on those systems before we fit them to a bus, before we go out and trial them actually on the street. And through our bank, they are running an incubator on a science park, and we have a conduit through to them, so that ideas that are good, that are worth pursuing, that are beginning to outgrow our temporary shared space, can move in through the incubator into a sort of an environment that will help them to develop and push things forward. So, final thing from me, a quote from our head of engineering, who last year had his title changed to Head of Engineering and Innovation, recognizing what we're trying to achieve here. Giving access to open data isn't about relinquishing our commercial advantage, it's about expanding our reach to partners and friends that we haven't met yet. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. You mentioned the Tech Lab there. When does that launch or be announced? Or
we were hoping for a formal ministerial opening of it, but recent reshuffles meant that everybody's diaries got screwed up. In practice, if you get in touch with us, if anybody's interested, we're open for business. So come and have a play with our data, and come and have a go with the systems and see what you can plug into them and what you can use.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Tony? Okay, right. Well, round of applause for Tony then. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Tony, could you hand back? Right. So back to the ticketing theme. We're next going to hear from Carl Partridge, the CEO of a company called Urban Things, who's going to talk to us about rethinking our approach to account-based travel. So Carl, over to you.
That's it. Hello, and actually we've been to the Tech Lab at Reading Buses. Our marketing coordinator's been, we can heartily recommend it. The only disappointment was that we didn't get to drive an actual bus. So a bit of feedback, childhood dream and all that. Thank you. Yes, so we're Urban Things. My name's Carl, I'm the CEO. We're a SME based in Old Street in the intelligent mobility sector. And we originally started out in B2C passenger information apps. So if you've ever used the Bus Checker app or the Travelline app, you might be familiar with some of our earlier products. And about 18 months ago, we began engaging with and we won government funding to re-examine the way in which we do smart ticketing. We won funding from Innovate UK, and this is a chance to kind of share some of our insights. That project has now finished. We've launched our pilot in Bristol into production on buses, and I wanted to share with you some of the findings. First time I've given this presentation, so bear with me. There's a couple of stats I've had to write down, and some very interesting data that can emerge from this as well, particularly pertinent to where we are today. So when we began the project of looking at ticketing, or to put it another way, because we want to get rid of tickets, how we pay for our transport, we thought, well, let's go back to basics. What would a dream smart ticketing system look like? What would the best possible way to pay for the way that we move ourselves around? Well, it would be account-based. And is there anybody that isn't familiar in the room with the term account-based travel? Great. Is there anybody that is familiar with the term account-based travel? So about half the room are just really nervous to put their hands up. But effectively getting rid of tickets and replacing them with a form of ID, i.e. a token. You move around, you present your ID, and then the back office works out where you've been, and you pay for your travel after the event. Contactless cards being one example. It would need to be a really great travel token for this to be a great experience. So the way in which we present our ID, it would need to be a flexible token. So it's media agnostic. Maybe we present a card, maybe we present a smartphone or a smart device, maybe it's a watch, in the future potentially biometrics. It needs to be a secure token, can be easily revoked, it can't be copied, it can't be cloned. Fingerprints, once your fingerprint has been copied, potentially that's it forever, you can't change your fingers. So there's all sorts of interesting things, well, unless you're on Mission Impossible. There's all sorts of interesting things to think about there. And it needs to be a reliable token. It needs to be easily issued, easily revoked, and affordable too. The third thing, a great passenger experience. As I think we've heard a lot of today, fundamentally we're just trying to move people around here in the best possible way to give them an easy journey. Not hundreds of tickets, not waiting for ages at the bus. We want to reduce dwell times getting onto vehicles. We want to reduce friction as much as possible. We also have the goal of making, I say apps, but the interface, how we plan and execute our journeys, what I call contextually aware. And by that, I mean that your app needs to know what you're doing. If you've planned a journey on the number 35 bus and you get on a number 36 bus, well, there's no point in sticking to the same journey plan. Maybe we can offer you a better one. So that passenger experience needs to be dynamic and it needs to be contextually vehicle aware. And finally, a great system would capture the generated data. There's so much amazing data that comes out of a journey like this. We're getting on a vehicle, we're getting off a vehicle. Who are we? Where are we going? What's our home location? Within the confines of respecting the ability to anonymize data and security and privacy, there is still an enormous amount we can do to optimize services using data. So those are our goals. Quick look at the current best smart ticketing available today. So we'll take a look at 3 ways of doing this. Please let me know afterwards if you're aware of other interesting ones. But smart card and NFC schemes. So the M card here in West Yorkshire, 52 smart card schemes in the UK at the moment. Contactless EMV, very big in the UK, Poland and Spain, just FYI. Hasn't really taken off in a lot of other places for various market-dependent reasons. Supported on TfL since 2016. 40% of their journeys use contactless now on Pay-as-You-Go. 50%. Thank you, Alison. This is great. We could be Stato. Is it really? That's great. Wow. And finally, M-ticketing, barcode display. It would be nice to see more attention being paid to mobile. I think passengers are demanding that. But we are starting to see that DfT wants mobile barcode ticketing rolled out onto every rail franchise by the end of 2018. And we've heard more about TfN's great plans for that too today. There are 5 main reasons we think these fall short of our dream passenger ticketing system. First of all, high capex, high total cost of ownership. It costs about £500,000 to equip a large fleet with contactless readers, ITSO compatible, and to build out all the security infrastructure, off-bus ticketing kiosks to run a smart card scheme. So coming back to our original criteria, that's a poor choice of token. Not universally deployable, and I probably need to explain what I mean by this, because obviously we've got lots of nice smart ways that work on different modes of transport. But large ETMs and connected readers, while they might be perfect for large fleets, what about ad hoc car sharing schemes? What about hire bikes? It's quite hard to imagine a contactless card anonymous scheme installed on a hire bike. So we asked our graphics whiz to illustrate the absurdity, and he has done so there. Not a flexible system, and not extensible to new vehicle types quickly and easily. Environmentally unfriendly. There are 9 tons of waste plastic each year generated by the Oyster card scheme in London. Poor data integration. At the moment, current solutions struggle to capture passenger metrics. There's no reliable way to measure live occupancy. TfL don't know who is on their vehicle, or vehicles rather, in real time. You don't tap off. And I don't think people want to tap off. And a poor passenger experience. So we think there's a new way. This is what we're working on in our project. And I think it was great to hear from passengers today. And I think the real standout point from passenger was that each of us carries a computer in our pockets. Each of us carries a biometrically secure ticket machine in our pockets. Almost all of your customers do if you're a transport operator. I think for the first time in recent months, it's now become possible to actually flip the convention on its head. We can remove that hardware from the vehicles. So instead of your phone being scanned by the vehicle, your phone scans the vehicle. But there is one missing piece. We need a cheap, easily deployable way to actually identify vehicles, coming back to that point about being contextually aware. If you're traveling around, you've planned a journey, how do you know what vehicle you're on? How do you know what's going on? And all of the solutions we looked at before fall short. So we've come up with this. This is our sort of initial proposal. We call it the hex tag. It's going to be an open standard, so I'll come back to that. And it's a 3-in-1 way to identify a vehicle to a smartphone, to fill that missing data gap. So it can sit on a QR code, it can sit on NFC, we've got some with us, so we'll be showing them off, and it can also importantly sit on a Bluetooth beacon, and I'll come back to why that is so important. It's obviously got no moving parts, requires no power supply. There's some mock-ups and some real-world installations of hex tags here. So let's come back to how we would use these in the real world. So our prototype system works as follows. Passengers are part of a scheme, any sort of mobility scheme. You sign up, you register, you have an app, and you check in and out of a vehicle. Now initially, that could be through scanning a hex tag, or it could just be through walking onto the vehicle. The second phase of our pilot is using Bluetooth beacons. You just get on a bus, you just get off a bus, it knows you've made the journey. Same with a hire bike, same with a train, and then effectively it's account-based travel. A sort of Amazon Go for public transport is the easiest way to pitch it. Because we now know exactly what vehicle the passenger has checked into, then it's a whole new ballgame in terms of contextual awareness. An app doesn't just know you're on a bus route, doesn't just know you're traveling, it knows you're on the 35 bus, not the 36. Let's offer you a new journey plan. Let's offer you a discounted ticket. Maybe it's run by a different operator. So compared to the other approaches that we examined at the beginning of our talk, compared to the bulkiness of ticket machines, obviously a scheme like this has no bulk at all. You're just using the technology your passengers already own. Compared to the waste of a smart card scheme, again, absolutely nothing. In terms of the cost of the infrastructure, almost nothing again. And in terms of the data that's generated, well, once we start using the system, we've got real-time information. We can generate live occupancy data to optimize services, journey summaries, customer relationships. You can even retarget customers who've used your services recently to offer them a cheaper ticket. So the possibilities are absolutely huge once we flip this convention on its head. I'm sure there are lots of natural questions about revenue protection. Happy to deal with those, and we'll be at the back afterwards as well. And in terms of our roadmap for this, as I mentioned before, later in the year we'll be introducing hex tag as an open standard. Reason for doing that? Because there's currently no universal way of identifying a vehicle to a digital device. If we put these out, and we'd like to encourage wide deployment of these, then in the same way that data encourages third parties to make apps, the hex tag will encourage third parties, we hope, to develop useful products. For example, customer service application. You scan a hex tag, you can feed back to the operator about damaged services, good drivers, etc. Vehicle maintenance apps. We're just unknown what will be developed, but we're very excited to see what the community would come up with once they can do this kind of thing. And barcodes are just the beginning. Once we deploy the hex tags onto Bluetooth, traffic counting applications, be-in, be-out applications, and the second phase of our pilot is all about moving to be-in, be-out. And my final slide, we launched this week in Bristol on the 7net bus service, a very limited pilot for us, which is perfect for our needs. And as you can see in our phase 1, passengers are checking on, they can either tap or scan the hex tag. And then phase 2 next month, we'll be moving to beacons, at which point, crucially, and I said I'd come back to this, once we move to beacons, then we know when you've got off the bus. And at that point, we can tell the operator in real time the occupancy of each vehicle. And that can be used to optimize services and make other operational decisions live, in play, rather than after the event. So that's a little about what we learned, and that's a little about us. We're going to be at the back during the open house if you want to come and have a demo or find out a bit more or ask any questions. And thank you for your time. Cheers. Sure.
Thank you very much for that, Carl. Does anyone have any questions for Carl? Okay, at the back there, we'll just get a microphone to you, and if you just say your name and where you're from first.
Yeah, hi, Roger Boyd from Leeds Council. Just a general question on that last thing. If you can track someone to the second, pretty much when they're getting on and off, just the kind of security and privacy implications of that, because it's effectively, someone could use that for surveillance methods.
Absolutely, and that's data that would be entirely private and not shared. I think the key is to have a platform through which an operator can access those metrics. So if you're a transport operator, you can see hotspots, you can see exactly which routes need optimizing, but you shouldn't ideally want to know the name, the address, the exact movements of every particular passenger around the network. If passengers want to opt into that kind of thing, that's entirely up to them. But by default, there's no reason why that data can't be private.
Okay, any more questions for Carl? As he mentioned, he will be sticking around for the open house. We've got another one here from BT. Let's just get a microphone to you, if that's all right. And here we have one.
Beata again, sorry. I know that there's a tiny minority of people who don't have mobile phones, but how do you deal with them?
No, absolutely, great questions. I mean, the beauty of a system like this is initially, because it's low cost, it can be deployed alongside existing solutions. And effectively, that's a nice way of migrating over. And in the future, the question to throw back at everybody is, at what point, in the same way that TfL got rid of cash on buses, at what point do you mandate a certain technology? So I think we keep an eye on the adoption, we keep an eye on the penetration rates, and at some point, I personally, whether it's 5 years from now, whether it's 10 years from now, I can see a future where it is mandated that you need a smartphone to travel. But for now, we deploy alongside.
Interesting. On that bombshell, I think we'll call it there.
Thank you, Alan.
Could we have the mic? Could you give that to Eric, please? Thanks. Right, we're just going to do a changeover for our next and final presentation. So this is our last lightning talk before lunch, where we'll break for an hour. So I'm going to hand over to Eric Thomason from the Institute of Transport Studies.
Hello everyone, my name is Eric Thomason. I'm a Research and Innovation Manager for the Institute for Transport Studies. I'm not actually one of our academics, so what I'm going to do is my best to paintball you with a whole bunch of ideas from our many academics from the Institute who we couldn't fit all in the room today. So I'll start just by giving a little bit of background. We're one of the top universities in the world. We're mandated to provide these slides to you in advance as part of our shameless promotion. We educate more than 32,000 students a year, so in terms of the future transport, there are a large number of students going through our university, and the potential there for being able to shape the future workforce is very large indeed. We have a very high level of student satisfaction. The Institute for Transport Studies itself, we're the largest academic institute for transport in the UK, with around 70 staff, and at any one time a similar number of PhD students, so there's a few statistics there. Basically, we do an awful lot of stuff, and I've also got my slides with timer on, which is good for you. It means we'll get through them even quicker. So we have a number of research groups, so we're, again, shaping future research around a number of themes here. Economics, human factors, spatial modelling, social and political sciences. So we're actually involved in many aspects of these things. So we work with everything from the technology end through to the social side of why people make journeys, why we might, what the impact is on society, what the impact is of all of these things joined together. We're also coalescing around some strategic themes, so connected transport, which is one of the themes that's come out repeatedly this morning, inclusive transport as well, making sure that everyone has access to services and mobility. A very important link with productive transport, so the essential links of transport to the local economy and to developing a productive and efficient local economy. And then resilience, both in terms of maintaining resilient services, but also services that will actually be responsive and reactive to the future and to the different demands of passengers. We have a number of master's programs and other ways in which we work with industry and with the public. But in terms of we have an undergraduate program, but our main way of working with the world is through a number of master's programs through which we have over 100 master's students graduating every year. So again, in terms of the graduates of the future and professionals, these are the routes with which we can work with you. And again, these are very successful. 97% of our graduates are employed in or in further training within a very short period of time. So it's a very strong, very well renowned route to academic training. A number of you will have seen the pod. So one of the big things that we're working on at the moment is developing leading research in automation. This slide here just name checks a number of projects, so UK projects, European projects. At the moment, we've got over £7 million worth of projects looking at multiple aspects of autonomous vehicles, but largely, rather than looking at the technologies themselves, where some of our main expertise lies in the human factors area. So how drivers themselves will react to autonomous vehicles, but perhaps more importantly, where they fit in with the wider transport environment and other road users. As part of our capabilities of doing this, we host world-class research facilities. So this here is our driving simulator, which is one of the most advanced driving simulators in the world. So there's a car cab within. Inside there, so you can just see through the door there, the cab and the wraparound visioning. This enables us to do a very high level of research with the automotive industry, but also with user acceptance testing. As well as the driving simulator, we have a commercial vehicle simulator, which is currently set up as a truck simulator, but it could equally be reconfigured to act as a bus simulator. Again, one of the most advanced in the country. Later this year, we'll be opening our pedestrian simulator, which will be a large interactive space, about half the size of this room, maybe from here to the back, so 9 meters by 4 meters wide, immersive back projected environment in which we can test all sorts of things. Pedestrians in the urban environment, we could put the cab of a vehicle in there, we could do user acceptance of carriages, all sorts of things like that. But this again will give us a lot of capability to work with people on a whole range of different research projects. We do a lot of work with head-mounted virtual reality as well. So this montage here, the coloured bit at the bottom is a pollution model which was developed for a recent Climathon event that was hosted here at the ODI back in October, I think it was, where we produced a visualization, an immersive visualization of traffic pollution. One of the big issues that came out during the course of the 2 days was the fact, the big problem with traffic pollution is it's invisible. So to be able to make that visible and to be able to immerse people within it, it was a way of being able to help people think about solutions, but also to understand the size and the location of the problem. So all of these facilities are now come under an underarching program. So we have a new centre called Virtuosity, which is about virtual city design. So and again, this is moving towards basically SimCity for grown-ups. It's that sort of view, the idea of being able to develop a simulated city environment where transport is only one of the data feeds. So we transport, energy, health, water and so on. So we can pull the different levers of different simulations and develop different models and to see what the unintended consequences might be of different types of development, investment, development of products and so on. Just a few words here about the motivation for driving simulation. Well, it's about being able to test new designs, new human-machine interfaces and vehicle designs and so on. But crucially, to be able to do these things virtually before you start building things, pouring concrete, developing new alignments and so on. So the capability to be able to, to rapidly prototype new ideas in a virtual environment, to be able to test them, to be able to do user testing with different community groups and so on as well. And that's that we believe is going to be increasingly critical for the UK economy and businesses in the economy to enable people, rather than stampede towards building technologies without necessarily understanding whether there's a need or a demand, which quite often does happen. Instead of doing that, to work more towards a co-design and co-development environment where we can work with users from early stage forward. And just an example here, one of the things that we're working closely with, we've got colleagues here from the Transport Systems Catapult, and one of the things we're working with the TSC on is the idea of the rapid generation of virtual environments, so being able to create urban environments, being able to monitor them and adapt them as they change, but so moving from a traditional process where perhaps in the past people would create 3D models from quite an involved process, moving from GIS and CAD drawings through to developing 3D models from those, and then ultimately quite a long process to produce the types of 3D models that you might drive in a driving simulator. Being able to do that really rapidly, and the advantage of that, being able to create photorealistic city environments that we can then start to use to when we're playing with these new different scenarios and futures and looking at impacts and so on. So this here is just a screenshot here showing one of the examples of something that has gone through our rapid design process, and we now have a drivable environment, an immersive environment here, which looks quite similar to the real world. And what we're doing is we're now doing tests to say when we expose drivers to the two environments, and we closely monitor the way they work, the way they drive. Are these actually good enough to be a compelling and realistic test environment? So just a few other things that I've been asked to mention. I've already mentioned briefly the work on vehicle emissions and air quality. Well, that happens to be another one of our big areas of expertise within the Institute for Transport Studies. So we have expertise there that is helping inform Transport for London, for example, working with them on their emission strategies in the capital, but also working with many cities and towns across the UK, looking at developing monitoring techniques and modelling traffic and developing pollution models, which is becoming increasingly important for a number of UK cities now because of exceedance of pollution levels. So being able to develop those models, but to combine them with other models of whether it be traffic signal modelling, modelling public transport models, and so on, to be able to look at what the solutions might be to the patterns that have been identified through those through that work. We've been involved with a number of local partners here in Leeds on an integrated transport, smarter travel planning solution. So there's an app due to be launched soon relating to that, which is an Innovate UK funded project. Another project I've been asked to mention is something called OptiTruck, which is a large European funded project where we're looking at optimal fuel consumption and predictive work there. So again, this is just a run through of the types of things that we do. Autopilot is another automated driving Internet of Things project that is working across a number of major European cities. And then I think finally this is another current European project, Horizon 2020 project, which is looking at connected data from electrified L category vehicles. So again, there's an expectation that this category of vehicle can play an increasing role in the sort of last mile urban mobility side of things. So connecting these types of electric vehicles with the type of mobility as a service type apps, so people can actually use more conventional, traditional types of transport, but then use the more flexible services within a city boundary. And that was a very quick whiz through some of the things we do. I mean, as I mentioned, we have so many academics at the institute, and in particular, one of the bits I perhaps missed out is the role of our academics in influencing planning and governance as well. So there are there's a major focus as well as on the technologies, as also as there is on understanding travellers and the choices they make and how we might influence behaviour change, because behaviour change is likely to be, well, it's going to be at least as important as the systems that need to be developed for those people to transfer to. So, sorry, that's quite a head full of ideas and things, but I'll be around also over the lunchtime period, and I've got some cards, and I'd certainly be able to direct you towards. If any of that has rung any bells for you, then I can connect you with the relevant academics within the institute who might be able to help take some of those ideas forward through further discussions.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Amazing. Fascinating set of projects.
Does anyone have any questions for Eric? Thought not, because it's lunchtime. Before everyone gets up to head off for lunch, just a couple of reminders. So this afternoon we'll be having we'll have two parts. So the first each of our speakers will kind of go into a breakout type session where you can move around and ask questions, get more information, see presentations, ride a dockless bike, whatever, here in the ODI from 2 till 3. At 3 o'clock, we'll then be doing a TFN Q&A panel. That'll mean we'll finish 3:45, so it'll be a 45-minute discussion. If you have questions you want me to bring up in that panel with TFN, we've got the bit on the whiteboard over there, so I can see there's a few post-it notes there already. During the lunch break and during the kind of first bit of the afternoon, feel free to drop your questions onto that and put them into that TFN panel, and we'll bring those up in the discussion. But before we go for lunch, can I please ask you to thank all of our 10 speakers who've been incredible. Thank you.